You're listening to the Naked Bible Podcast. To support this podcast, visit nakedbiblepodcast.com and click on the support link in the upper right-hand corner. If you're new to the podcast and Dr. Heiser's approach to the Bible, click on New Start Here at nakedbiblepodcast.com.
Welcome to the Naked Bible Podcast, episode 190, SBL Conference Interviews, Part 1. I'm the layman, Trey Strickland. He's a scholar, Dr. Michael Heiser. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good. Well, here we are. We are in Boston. That means we are not
in Rhode Island anymore, right. Teardrop, but the big fan of Boston. This is my second time in the great city of Boston. Everything's green. Celtics, the land of...
And the Red Sox. Don't
Bruins
forget the Red
and the
Sox.
Red Sox.
Yeah.
And you may take a tour of Fenway.
Yeah, that's one of my goals, to slip away for an hour and tour Fenway Park. So
that'll be neat.
Yeah, it will be. It's just something I've always wanted to see. So, Lord willing, I'll get to do that. Now, in our first round here, we have some good interviews, obviously. We're going to talk with David Burnett and catching up with David. David is familiar to the podcast audience. Again, we've had him on as a guest. People are familiar with him and his work. So he is well into his first semester of doctoral work at Marquette. So for sure, we're going to ask him about that, how it's going, and what he's doing in terms of research, what he's thinking about. And then we want to talk to Marina Westerdahl. Marina is a beginning doctoral student. She's applying for doctoral programs now. She has several options. I met her at Knox Seminary when I taught an interterm course on really the unseen realm content. We use that as a textbook. Knox is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, but she was a mom, had a couple of kids, decided, I want to go to seminary. And again, we met there, and now she's, applying for doctoral work. So we wanted to talk with her about her experience and, again, some of the things that are really interesting her in terms of content. And then finally, Sam Lamerson on this episode. Sam, again, we interviewed last year as well. Sam is a New Testament professor at Knox there in Fort Lauderdale. And some of you may recall that Sam is also sort of a fellow traveler with some interest in paranormal topics. And he has something that I think you're going to get a kick out of that he actually did in Fort Lauderdale with his own audience to sort of get them interested in why Christians should think about that sort of stuff. And we want to talk to him about that. So another good round of interviews here at SBL. Well, we're back at SBL, and guess who we ran into? It's David Burnett.
Hey there.
So obviously, lots of people on the podcast are familiar with you, David. So why don't you give us an update on what have you been doing?
Starting my doctorate at Marquette University, drowning in work.
Okay, so what are the classes you have? Just give us the classes.
So I'm doing 3 seminars right now. One, Judaism in the Hellenistic World with Joshua Burns.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing Advanced Hebrew with Deidre Dempsey.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm doing Origins of Trinitarianism to Augustine with Michelle Barnes.
Oh, wow. Boy, that sounds like the place to be. So, okay, yeah. I got to ask you a few questions here. All right.
Mm-hmm.
For our audience, explain what happens in a seminar.
So in a seminar, you read till your eyes fall out, an absurd amount of literature. So a lot of primary sources and then a lot of secondary literature as well. A lot of articles, books. So you read the material and then you come to class expected to have read it all, and you're discussing it, and a lot of the sort of lectures and discussions center around the reading. And then you'll have major term papers in those courses, article reviews, things like that. So a lot of work. More pages than you could physically read, probably.
Sure,
but it's fun.
You just do the best you can.
Yeah, we kind of joke that if we didn't love this stuff, we would kill ourselves.
Right. Well, that brings back memories. Actually, what are you using for advanced Hebrew? Do you have to read through an advanced grammar? Or are you doing something else?
Actually, we do a lot of translation, so it assumes that we've had like 2 years of Hebrew or so.
Okay.
But we often refer to let's see. Well, we've referred to a number of different grammars, sort of.
Juan
Maroka,
Walter O'Connor.
Yeah, Maroka is one we've referred to quite frequently, but it's focusing in on the Psalms.
Mm-hmm.
So we do translations of Psalms every week. So 1 to 2 Psalms we'll translate a week, and it's actually a split class because we have a smaller pool of graduate students at Marquette. And so half the class is a Psalms class only that doesn't need Hebrew. And then the other half of the class, advanced Hebrew, is doing all the translation work for the
each
class.
One has their own set of requirements.
Right,
and all that.
right.
Yeah.
So
we did that too at Wisconsin.
Yeah, so that's what we're doing. And it's fun. Dr. Dempsey's amazing. She's incredible. So,
I the name of one of my novel characters, I have to admit, actually comes from her.
Really?
Yes, it does.
No way.
I'm serious. Yeah.
What you gotta? You can't leave me hanging there.
No,
What's that about?
I read an article or two by her on something and I was writing my first novel, and I just liked the name, so that's what I did.
Okay, now the whole world knows this. I'm totally going to tell her this.
Well, go ahead.
This is great.
Tell her. You can tell her.
That's great.
Yeah. Got to get names somewhere. You can't just name it after your kids.
Hey, you're in my buddy Mike's novel. Did you know that?
Well, then you can't kill anybody off. So.
You kill her off in the book?
No, she's still alive.
Okay. I was like, my goodness.
She's alive after 2 installments. But
hey, Dr. Dempsey, good news. You're not killed off in this book that you're in that you don't know about.
I just like the name. So
Nice.
All right. So how have you adjusted to life at Marquette? Okay, because you went from Texas.
Yeah.
And now you're in Wisconsin.
Yeah. Talk about a transition. But I haven't felt the bulk of the transition yet. We're not in the deep of winter.
You never go outside.
No, I mean, I'm okay with the 30s. It actually feels really good.
Oh, just you wait.
Yeah, I mean, you can wear sweaters and stuff, and it's great. I like that part is cool. As long as it stayed in the 30s, I'm good. Now, the coldest it's got so far was it got 25 or something one day. And it was kind of cold. But I was like,
no pun intended. That's a warm up. Okay.
Right. I know.
Yeah,
I literally know. Everyone tells me about it. I heard about the polar vortex about 5 years ago or something. And so everyone's told me all the horror stories. It's funny though. When I moved to Wisconsin, I was like, so you Wisconsin people, Wisconsinites, I guess they call them.
It's better than Wisconsinians.
Yeah, I didn't know what to call them, so I guess I guessed it right. But so I was like, y'all are used to this, right? I mean, y'all are used to the winters, and they're like, no, we still hate it. I was like, okay, all right.
Do you have a car?
Yeah. I actually bought a Subaru before I moved.
Do you have a
there.
heater to because all kidding aside, you can get a little heater installed in your engine block. And then if you're different locations, you can plug in. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Subarus have those aluminum engines that heat really quickly.
Okay.
For that reason, and of course, the all-wheel drive. So I had to get ready.
Like you're putting some thought into it.
Oh yeah, I'm prepared. I think I've got my parka and hats and boots and all this stuff, so I'm ready to go.
So, how much interaction have you had with Dr. Orlov?
Oh, a ton. I love.
Yeah, well,
Andre Orlov's the best,
fun,
man.
Yeah.
And we have so much fun. He took me to this his favorite Indian buffet, and we just started talking, and then 2.5 hours later,
you had me at Indian and buffet.
I'm telling you, oh my gosh, come to Marquette and we'll go.
Yeah, I could take an enemy there and still enjoy myself.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you have no enemy in Andre. But no, he's incredible. We've had some really great conversations, and we email back and forth all the time. And he's been on sabbatical this semester, so he comes back next semester, and then hopefully I'll be his TA next semester, and I'll be helping him edit his next book coming out. Without
incriminating anyone, your response to the teaching experience.
Oh yeah, my first lecturing. Yeah. It was really great, actually. Okay. I had a really great experience. I sort of was thrown off into the deep end, So at Marquette, they're required undergrads, since it's a Jesuit school, the undergrads are required to take Intro to Theology. And so Mark Johnson, who I TA for, is a theology prof there. He's an Aquinas guy. And I was really scared about that when they assigned me to him, because I was like, I don't know anything about Aquinas, so this is not a good fit.
Right.
But they're like, no, don't worry. He's teaching intro classes. I was like, okay, phew. So I was like, I don't have to read Thomas Aquinas. That's great. I'm sure I will.
You don't have to read the whole Summa while you.
Yeah, I'm not gonna read the whole Summa. I'm just not. It's not gonna happen. But no. So he has 3 intro to theology classes in a row. And from like 9:30 a.m. to like 1:45 or something. And so, I thought I was just going to be totally exhausted, and because I taught all 3 in a row, and so the week that I taught was we were going through Gospel of John.
Did you do discussions?
Well, I do sort of I lecture.
Okay.
And then throughout it, I'll have some sort of open-ended questions to try to stir the pot a little bit. But they just didn't bite a whole lot, it's hard to get them to talk. I'm like, are you guys awake? Yeah, freshman and sophomore. Okay, but you know me, yeah. I'm pretty jovial.
That's your answer though.
Yeah, but freshman and sophomore, yeah.
They're immune to that.
Yeah, they are. Now, it's cool, though, because I did get some, gaping mouths and wide eyes and stuff once we got towards the end and connecting some stuff that I showed them in the beginning. So all the intertextual stuff, that they wouldn't know those words. But, the bringing the themes out in John and like the Akedah, the binding of Isaac in the crucifixion. Why is Jesus bound? Why is he carrying his cross? This isn't in any of the Gospels. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And so looking at stuff like that, Jesus has the new temple. Jesus is the man, the human one, the gardener, picking up on all these Adamic themes, Adam. So that they got really excited once I started making those connections, because a lot of the kids had sort of grown up in Catholic school and stuff. So they had a lot of exposure to scripture, but just never studied it. Probably just in catechesis or whatever, So it's really cool to sort of blow the lids off for them. I had some students that stayed after that were like, man, we heard this Lamb of God all the time in the liturgy all the time. We had no idea what it meant. It's like, well, you do now.
Wow, well, that's good.
So that was cool. It was a really cool experience. And I like being at Marquette because, you have a lot of privileged, kids who just were kind of spoiled and didn't realize that all this stuff is there. They've never studied it for themselves. And so to try to break the lid off and show them some of it was cool, and you always have students that couldn't care less,
Sure.
So you try to get them all involved, and realistically, I can't do much teaching there. I mean, we're just too busy. So, and, Dr. Johnson's been incredible about, realizing how much work I have to do and not burdening me with a lot. So, and Marquette's really great about that. I mean, they really take care of their doctoral students.
So when Orlov comes back and you'll be the TA, that's just primarily going to be
we're hoping that's the case. Yeah,
the editing task. Or if it works out, that's pretty much
that's pretty much my task. Okay. Yeah. So, and we've talked about it in the theme of the book and stuff. And
what's it on?
We'll keep. Do we want to keep that under wraps right now?
Okay,
because I haven't talked to him about that.
All right, I have a related.
So I don't want to share it if he hasn't shared it himself.
And my next question is not because I have any knowledge of the book, because I don't.
Yeah.
But I'm planning on going to the Knox seminar Saturday night. Yeah. Have you ever been to it? That's first question. And if you have, or I have to think Orlov is going to be at this thing.
Of course, yeah.
So I'm hoping it's more than just like wine and cheese kind of stuff and chit chat. They're actually going to talk about research projects, correct?
Well, aren't they doing a thing for the Festschrift for Michael Stone?
I don't know. It just, the description I saw said that they're going to be talking about new directions in Enoch research or something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's a Saturday night reception.
Honestly, I saw the Enoch seminar stuff, but I didn't look at all the
It just said everybody's welcome
topics.
And so on and so forth. So I'm thinking, I'd like to sit in on that.
Oh, I would love to be there. Yeah. Well, let's go. I'll email Dr. Orlov and see.
Yeah. I've been to receptions before. At
he probably SBL, knows what's going on.
And they turn into business meetings real fast. So I'm not really up for that, even if the food's good.
Well, you just go for the drinks and the food. I mean,
I want to hear about Enoch stuff.
I mean, that's, I was really excited that the Enoch seminar thing is overlapping with SBL stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't know they were even doing that until yesterday. I think my buddy Rob Casho from Brown University posted that he was in a session at Harvard on it. And I was like, man, I want to be there.
Yeah.
So I want to try to go.
Yeah, that sounds encouraging then.
And I've told Dr. Orlov, that's a goal of mine,
Mm-hmm.
in the future is, I don't know. I think you have to have your PhD before you can,
I don't know. It just
be a member of Enoch Seminar.
It just said all are welcome. So I figured,
but I want to be involved with it in the future.
Right. But they could have just said that with that assumption,
right.
Because it's here at SBL. So we'll see. We'll find out.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, okay. Do you have any, are you angling for anything specific as far as a dissertation?
Oh yeah.
You got it narrowed to one thing, or you're
well, I mean, it's the trajectory we've dealt with.
Okay.
I mean,
the
so yeah,
stuff.
So a lot of the listeners who heard the resurrection, death of the gods, and my stuff on Romans 4,
Mm-hmm.
These are all pieces to the puzzle. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the 1 Corinthians 15, because I've done more research on it since I presented last year on that paper. I've had a lot of emails about it, a lot of messages and conversations about it from other scholars who sort of, never thought of that, and after being cited in Thiessen's book, I actually got in some interesting conversations with some other scholars about this project. So that's going to be a big portion, I think. It's going to be a big chapter in my dissertation, that topic.
Did you ever have a follow-up conversation with the guy at, it was last year, I think it was in the same section you spoke in, but I'm trying to remember who was Litwa. Okay.
Oh, David Litwa.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then there was in part of the Q&A, it was either your paper that you said something and this guy heard it, or it was a Q&A where there was some interaction. There was a guy from Harvard there that came up to you afterwards and said,
I think he was from Yale.
Okay, because this will really help what I'm doing. Did you ever?
Christopher. Yeah, we actually. That's weird you brought that up because we literally just ran into each other.
Okay.
So he was coming back from getting his name tag, and I just went and got mine. And he was like, David. Yeah, and I was like, yeah, Christopher, what's up? And so we stopped and talked for a little bit. And congratulations to Christopher, by the way. He got a tenure track job at Cornell College.
Oh,
so congratulations to him. He's out of the job market finally.
Yeah, well, that's a
he's like, I can actually enjoy SBL now instead of just posturing the whole time.
Right.
It's great. So, I'm very excited for him, but yeah, I told him he was a big encouragement to me because, especially coming from Yale, telling me that, I was connecting dots of how these texts are being used by Paul here in ways that he could never sort of figure out how it all fits together.
Yeah, he was like, really excited last year.
Yeah, he got really excited, and it got me more excited because, wow, someone's seeing this, And I'm still trying to convince Dr. Cover at Marquette about it. I think he's slowly...
What's his first name?
Michael Cover.
Okay.
Michael Cover.
I knew another Cover, but go ahead.
Yeah, he's as sharp gets, man. He is... I'm serious. I can't speak highly enough of
what's
Dr.
the
Cover.
obstacle? I mean, what?
I think to be fair, we've only talked about the Deuteronomy 4 sort of background to the creature list there in 1 Corinthians 15. We talked about that the last time we sat down, and he kept going that, well, this is clearly Genesis. I mean, this is creation stuff. This is Adam. And I said, well, Deuteronomy is also sort of creation. And we talked about overlapping creation and Exodus, and he wasn't buying that too quickly. He's like, you may be trying to put an unnecessary layer in there that's not there. But he hasn't heard the whole argument, and he's forgotten more than I'll ever learn probably. So to have this little peon, discussing this with him. No, but he's so kind. He's so thoughtful. He's so nuanced, and he really is a joy to have there on the third floor in Marquette Hall because his schedule's crazy, and he has a family, and he still makes time for us, And so he's a virtuous man. He's a priest. He's a priest in the Anglican Communion from Dallas area, actually. His dad taught at DTS, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Wow. See the other cover I know is Robin, who had a PhD from Harvard. He was an ancient Near Eastern studies guy, but he taught at Dallas for a while.
That's his dad.
Okay, so where's his dad?
That's
at
Michael
now?
Cover's dad.
Wow. Okay, so where's his dad at now?
I don't know. We haven't talked about it. But
Okay, yeah.
yeah, he had parted ways with DTS back a
Right.
long time
It
ago.
was in the late 80s, early
Yeah.
90s, yeah. But he
a
was there
kid.
when I was there, but I never got to take a class from him. So I was, yeah.
Yeah, that's
okay,
that's
the
literally
guy.
his son.
Wow. Boy.
And I mean, he's got pedigree of pedigrees. I mean, the guy is. It's like,
Now I'm feeling a little bit old.
well, yeah, it's Yale. I think it's Yale, Harvard, Notre Dame is his pedigree. You know,
Okay.
and he was a Lilly Fellow. You know, he won the Ackmeyer Award at SBL for New Testament. I lucked out big time.
Yeah.
You know, being there with him,
Oh,
and
that's it.
our
That's really
faculty at
interesting.
Marquette is outstanding. I mean, it is a place to study Second Temple and Christian origins, and it is, man, it's the spot.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping you'd get in there, as you know, obviously.
Yeah, you know that was my first choice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Wow, that's
I was
pretty neat.
I was very happy, and I really have a lot of thanks goes out to Andre Orloff, because we really connected last year at SBL, and he was really digging my research proposal, and we hit it off, and it was like sort of a peas in a pod type situation, you know.
Yeah. So for this year, last question. I know you got the Tuesday morning slot.
Yes,
and I have been there
the
before.
worst slot of SBL.
Well, but there's two ways to look at that.
The last slot.
There's two ways to look at that. That there are fewer papers. Okay, so that means if you're staying, there are fewer options.
Right.
So you might actually get a full room. I mean, when I read a paper on Tuesday morning
Not
once,
sure if I want full room. It's like, this paper's more chill than my last one.
or it's like half the people there just, well, this sounded better than the other thing. I don't really know,
Yeah.
but either one was bad.
No, I mean, I joke about it, but we actually have a really good session. I mean, the whole session is on 2 Corinthians 12 on the ascent to heaven.
Yeah, well, see, you know,
And-
if you're staying and even if you're just broadly New Testament, you're
Right.
going to have people wind up in that. So
if you're interested in New Testament or Paul or apocalyptic or Second Temple or ascents and visions and all that stuff, or apocalyptic epistemology, that's the spot. That's like a
Okay.
great section to be in.
is there? This will be the last question. Then.
Yeah,
Is
sure.
there a paper that you're angling to hear? One in particular? Can you pull one out of your head? Like, oh,
That's tough.
I saw this, and I can't wait to go.
Yeah, that's tough.
So there's no like paper like Watchers and Bastard Spirits in Galatians 3.
Tyler Stewart, yeah,
Right.
fellow Marquette man,
Right.
You know?
As soon as we saw that, it's like, oh yeah.
That's more Marquette connection there. Not
Nothing that
of
sounds
that
good.
not of that caliber. I think no. I really like Tyler Stewart's work. I mean, he's incredibly intelligent, and he's a good man too. I don't really nothing that just like screams out like
Right.
in our sort of wheelhouses. But there are quite a few papers that I am interested in. It's just there's too many right now to sort of rattle off.
Yeah, there's one on Gibborim in Septuagint, and I don't know. I can't remember what the title
What
of it
section
was.
is that in? I don't even know if I saw that.
I don't know. I'd have to look at my schedule, but I have maybe 4 or 5 that I have written down that I'd really like to get to, including the Knox Seminar. But yeah, I know. I just was wondering if there was something that maybe I missed. And if you brought it up, it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still like frazzled from all my work. Like this is the first break I've had was my plane ride here. So, you know,
Yeah, no,
so
I know.
I'll sit down and actually go over my schedule tonight, what I'm actually doing. So,
Okay. Well, thanks for spending a few minutes with us.
yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Always.
Well, we're here at SBL in Boston now. And our first interview is with Marina Westerdahl. And I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. We've known each other for a couple of years, but it's better coming from you to tell the story.
Sure. So I'm Marina. I'm originally from Argentina, and I came when I was 12. Been married about 18 years, have 2 kids, and I originally decided to go to seminary about 5.5, 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been a stay-at-home mom. I'd run my own business. And since I was very young, I just loved studying scripture, reading books. And I was very involved in ministry. And there was an opportunity to go to a local seminary, Knox Theological Seminary.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the beginning of my journey.
Yeah, and that's where we met at Knox.
Yes.
So I did an interterm course. I don't even remember what it was called, but I know we went through
spiritual theology.
Yeah, something like that. Sam Lamerson is the president there. He gave it a title, and I said I would come, and we wound up going through a lot of the kind of content that's in Unseen Realm, Divine Counsel stuff. So let's just talk about that. What was your experience in that?
Well, it was really providential when you came. I was I had been reading some of your work. I'd been taking quite a heavy course load. I was taking a class on Ephesians, a class on John Calvin, Old Testament, and what happened was I was reading a lot through all those 3 classes were taking me to Deuteronomy. And I remember reading through the Song of Moses, Deuteronomy 32. And the experience that I had, which was amazing, and I know you mentioned you had a similar experience with Psalm 82, but I was reading through Deuteronomy, and verse 8 and 9 just jumped off the page.
Right. It's good you were reading were you reading ESV?
ESV, yes.
Yeah, good you pick that one.
The first thing I did was compare. I went and opened my NIV, my NASB, and the King James, and they all had a different translation, which I would have totally missed.
Right.
So I know that was providential. And I'd grown up in church. I'd read my Bible. I had never seen those 2 verses. So what happened was that I couldn't get over what the verse said about God dividing the nations of the earth according to the number of the sons of God. And so I had so many questions. And I decided to do my paper in Old Testament on the different, the divergent translations from the Masoretic, the Septuagint, the Qumran scrolls. And so that led me to your work.
Well,
so I started doing
the BibSac article.
I was doing online research, and I was, your name was coming up. And so I was reading anything that I could find that you'd written on that topic. And then, so this was fall semester of 2015.
Right.
And I find out in January that, hey, Dr. Heiser is coming to teach. I was like, what?
That must mean something.
Yes. I was like, wow, he's coming to teach me. So it was really exciting. So
yeah, well, it was fun. We had a good time. There was I don't know, it was a small number as interterms usually are, but it was a lot of fun. There were good questions. Yeah. Covered a lot of ground in just a few days.
Yeah. Oh, it blew my mind.
Yeah,
there was so much I'd never seen or even thought about. So.
Yeah. Well, you had my 15 years sort of scrunched into a week and a half or 3. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's I hadn't heard some of the details of that story, but that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So you're in this program, you take the course. And you complete whatever program you were in. What
it was the Master's in Biblical and Theological Studies.
Okay. And then you decide you want more punishment.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Well, I had not considered doing doctoral work. I was just going to go get my master's and, join a ministry and be a mom. And I fell in love with research. I really did. And this topic of who are the sons of God, it just led me to a whole new world of this underlying theology that's in Scripture that I had missed my whole life. And rereading not just the Old Testament, but the New Testament. I mean, Paul's theology about the powers and principalities. Oh, and that was another class I was taking at that time, was in Ephesians, powers and principalities. So I began to ask myself, well, Paul didn't have a New Testament. Where did he get the powers and principalities concept, those terms? Obviously, it was the Old Testament. So I began to go back and then, is there a link between these? So that just wanting to continue learning and finding not just the biblical studies aspect, but what theological implications are there of these sons of God. And I think there's many. I haven't started my doctorate work yet. But the more I read and the more I think of this topic, I realize that even in the eschatological terms,
Sure.
that the fact that that Jesus didn't come just for a forgiveness of sins. There's the cosmic reason. So all of Paul's theology came alive even more by understanding a little more of the identity of these sons of God.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. We were talking, it was mentioned in earlier interviews that we did. Again, podcast listeners have heard bits and pieces of that, but yeah, like when Paul talks about the resurrection, we typically think of, I get a new body.
Yeah.
Won't that be neat?
Yeah.
But again, 5 or 6 times he feels sort of compelled by something. When he thinks of the thought of the resurrection, his mind goes to, again, the defeat, the delegitimization of the powers, the authorities, the rulers.
Yes.
Like, why does he make why does he connect those two things? Because you never hear it that way.
Right.
But again, if he might have done it once, okay, he sort of had a bad day, or he wanted to vary the message. But again, half a dozen times he thinks of A, and then B is this, this sons of God stuff.
Right.
So why is that? Where does that come from? So it's you get these connection points again all over the place that you don't expect to find them, and you'd never see them unless you have, again, sort of the matrix in your head. You kind of know what you're looking for.
Right.
Now, again, I know you're trying to work out the details of your doctoral study, applications, interviews, all that stuff.
Yes.
What are your research interests? Have you? And it's early, so you don't really have to have a topic, but you've got to be thinking about a couple things.
Well, definitely interested in not just the identity, but the theological implications. So I would like to do some work between both the Old and the New Testaments. So I'm looking at right now of having a Old Testament supervisor and a New Testament supervisor, but it's also important to the New Testament supervisor and the Old Testament supervisor have experience in the intertestamental writings and literature, because there seems to be a progression of terms that there's a link there in the language, and so I that's sort of what I would like to study. It's not clear,
right? But what you're doing, and I'm just going to point this out for our listeners. What you're doing is smart. Because you just mentioned, well, hey, it's important that my advisors, have some cross-fertilization here, where chances are reasonable that not just maybe one person on your committee, but a few of them have run into this material. I mention that because, you can talk to a lot of New Testament professors, for instance, about, divine counsel stuff. How does that bleed over in the New Testament? And they have no idea what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't mean they're dumb. They have PhDs. They're good thinkers. They're good researchers. But when you get to doctoral work, you can really fall victim to tunnel vision. Where you get funneled into one little area, whether you're interested or not, or whether you sort of feel, well, I got to do this, to have a dissertation topic that so and so can supervise.
Right.
There are a lot of people who go through that, and they're never exposed to wider, thinking, wider topic areas. And they literally can get a PhD and teach 10, 15, 20 years somewhere and have never heard of this. I've had a New Testament professor once email me about the citation in Hebrews. That again, if you're into Hebrews, you sort of know that there's a reference to the gods, okay, in Hebrews 1, but it doesn't come from the Masoretic text, and even in the Septuagint, it's a little fuzzy. And so this guy who's he's a seasoned New Testament scholar emailed me one day and said, I know this is in the Qumran stuff, and Deuteronomy 32, there's something going on there, and this looks like where the citation comes from, that writer of Hebrews was thinking of. Does this have anything to do with that divine counsel stuff you work on? And it's like, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
But again, he had never really hit it and thought about it. So for you to be thinking ahead, and again, like, hey, it'd be nice to have someone who sort of knows what I'm talking about, like knows what I want to think about. That's really wise. So what's been your experience since you've, again, had your cage rattled?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
How about your experience talking to, friends, other believers, the home Bible study thing, church? Yeah,
Well,
have you dared to bring any of this up?
I
What's that
get
been like?
looks when I do bring up,
Right.
in especially at church. I've discussed it, of course, with family members and friends, and there's a certain. It's almost like you can only share a certain amount, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But at church, especially, they might look at me like, "Wow, what?" The main thing
What
is
happened to you?
what. Yes, and the one thing that, which was my question, was, well, what about the Shema? What about the oneness
Sure.
of God? Are you talking about other gods? That makes people very nervous, especially in Christian circles.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that I have to be careful in what I say, and realize that perhaps not everybody gets as excited about this
Mm-hmm.
as I do.
Or is even really ready, because you
Right.
could, I'm sure you have the feeling, like I do so many times. It's, well, I'd love to answer that question, but we have to talk about these 10 other things first before
Yeah.
the answer would make any sense,
Yeah.
or so that you're not troubled by the answer.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get into that. I assume you haven't been written out of anybody's will,
I
Or-
know.
and you're still at the church you were at before you started all this. And
Well, that's another story.
Oh,
There's
okay.
some changes there, but it's for
Okay.
different reasons.
all right, well,
So,
that's good. I
yeah.
mean, just so that you didn't sort of get drummed out or anything.
No. But I have, had to, with this, I have to realize that it took me a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't see it. And I do see what happened as I had been in seminary for 2.5 years
Mhm.
already, and I had never noticed. I had never had a professor even mention this.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of helps me realize that I have to be patient, and many people may not be interested, and it's okay. They can still be good Christians,
Sure,
and,
absolutely.
and not go into this depth. Now, for me, I find it fascinating, and I want to keep learning about it and continue and finding perhaps theological implications for
Mhm.
this.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love in some of the interviews that you did with Fern and Audrey
Mm-hmm.
is that that's the practical outcome
Mm-hmm.
of this very wonderful and deep teaching. So I think that there is, perhaps thinking long term, there are practical outcomes to pursuing new knowledge in this theology. So
What would you say, again, Naked Bible podcast
Mhm.
audience has a lot of homeschool moms in it.
really, I didn't know.
A lot of moms just generally.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing as we travel, Trey and I, and, just even, by myself as well. You get to meet people, and you hear that they listen to the podcast,
Mhm.
but the variety is just kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like I was at a conference 2 weeks ago, and I'm talking to somebody in a hallway, and then somebody walks by and then just stops and looks and recognizes me, I guess, from the
Mhm.
website.
Yeah.
And he's from London.
Oh.
So then that guy goes
Yeah.
away, and then we resume our conversation, and it happened again. And that guy's from Norway.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, it's just really, and even, being at the, just, we were doing some interviews last night after we were done, somebody, stops and says, hey, I'm at this such and such institution, and, my students, love your podcast. I listen to it too. And, we read the books, and North Carolina, I mean, just all over the United States.
Wow.
It's really kind of
Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah.
the reach. I mean, we all know what the internet is, but until
Mhm.
you're sort of actually doing something that, involves the internet, and people actually,
Oh, yeah.
tap
My
into it.
husband listens to your podcast,
Right.
and many times he's like, "Oh, I was on my way to work. Guess what Heiser said?"
What did he do now? Well, what would you say again to somebody, like yourself,
Mhm.
they're, whatever, station of life, and
Mhm.
they're thinking about, okay, maybe now or maybe a few years down the road, I want to throw my hat into the ring. I want to actually get formal education or take
Mhm.
courses. I mean, what would you say to them? I assume your experience, overall has been a good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how would you advise someone? What are the
So,
do's, the don'ts?
someone interested in seminary training?
Someone interested in seminary. Yeah.
Well, I always say this, that you get through seminary on your knees.
Mhm.
for me, it's been so much prayer. When I began, the types of books that I was reading, Bob Inc.
Right, that would be quite different.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd always been a reader, but the level of reading, the amount of reading, it was overwhelming. So there's an adjustment period.
Mm-hmm.
Be patient with yourself. Only take 1-2 classes at a time if that's all you can handle.
Mm-hmm.
And just approach scripture with a posture of humility and realize that there's so much you don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's really important.
So, absolutely.
And you're going to find that out going through your doctoral work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, a lot of people have the impression that people with PhDs, sort of, and you'll meet these types, but anybody with a PhD sort of thinks they know everything. And that's actually very contrary.
Yeah.
To most of my experience.
Right.
Again, you will meet those people that sort of give you that impression, but overwhelmingly, they just get it.
Yeah.
I know a lot about this one area because, it's under the umbrella of Old Testament, and I know a lot of this because it was my dissertation, and I had to read this, that, and the other thing, and basically try to cover everything that's been written on that, and that consumed my life for 5, 6, 7 years. So that's really what I know.
Yeah.
But again, if they, sort of step back and look at that, it's like, that's what I know. But this other stuff over here, I'm going to be real careful.
Yeah.
What I say, and so a lot of the PhDs I know are very cognizant of that.
Yeah.
And so that's good advice. It's almost like, I hate to say it this way, but I think you run into more of that when you have people who sort of know enough not to be dangerous, but know enough to know that they know more than the people they're ministering to.
Right.
And again, part of there's an arrogance problem there. There's a little bit of a pride problem, but they're also sort of taught to think that way, or kind of victimized because their people expect them to be the answer person. And then if as you get 4 or 5 years of that, then you wonder, well, if I don't know, can I fake my way through it? Because I don't want to create the impression that I'm, that I don't know things.
Right. But it's better to say, I don't know. I'm not an expert in this field.
Front.
And that, to me, that's actually, I think, higher of that person. I think highly of that person that will say, and it's true. I mean, you can only zero in on a specific area because we don't have infinite intellect and time, so
How did your seminary time affect your kids at all? Were they encouraging? Were they sort of ambivalent? Or
I took all my classes basically during the day while they were at school. My daughter just started 9th grade and my son just started 7th grade. So when I started seminary about 5.5, 6 years ago, they were little, but they were in school, and they were okay. But I realized that as time went by, that it was actually a really positive thing, because my daughter, for one class, for speech class, she actually talked about, she had to choose, my son picked my husband, and so my daughter picked me. So she did I look up to my mom because she studies and she's learning, different languages.
Sure.
And so I realized that it helped inspire my kids. So there may have been times maybe where, mommy has to study or write a paper, so we're not going to go here or there. But overall, it's been very good, very positive.
It's good to get them young. When you said inspire the kids, I thought of I'm going to not name this person because
they may be listening.
But I know someone who went to school, didn't need the degree, but went to school to try to motivate their kid.
Oh, and what happened?
Like I'm going to take the same courses and the degree.
They went with their kids?
Well, they weren't always in but they took the same program.
Yeah.
Thinking, well, if dad's in there doing it, that's going to motivate them to put a little fire under the. Didn't work. Didn't work at all. It was like the kid would look at him and like, I don't know why you're doing this. and then again, the fellow I know, he wouldn't quit either. Wow. So when he realized this isn't working, it's not like, oh well, I tried that. I can walk away. I actually went through the whole degree program and didn't need the degree because he already had a good job in something else. But yeah, it was, and again, this is somebody in my wider, family. So I would hear the details of this struggle, and why don't you just drop out?
Yep.
I mean,
so
you don't
what was
need
the degree
this.
in?
It was like computer science or something.
Oh wow! So it's
and didn't know anything. He would tell me, I'm going in. I'm sitting there, and we're having a test, and before I can even read the instructions, I hear, like these younger kids just typing out this code, and thinking like, I can't keep up.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't quit.
Wow.
But it didn't work. The story is it didn't work.
Well, maybe. Well, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, did his kid continue in school?
He did continue.
Well, that's good.
And he finished a few, like, I don't know, two years or so later. Mm-hmm. But it didn't propel him, like to work harder in class or take more classes or get out sooner. Yeah. It almost had zero effect, maybe comic effect. I don't know, but
wow.
Yeah. Well, thanks for spending a little time with us, just to hear your story, and again, I hope it does inspire some, out in the audience, because I do get a lot of inquiries about should I take classes, a lot of it is like language stuff. People want to learn how to handle languages. But should I go to school? I'm thinking about going to seminary. What should I be looking out for? And you have your sort of your normal obstacles, the time, the expense, and all that. But there are these intangibles too. If you really feel driven, and you can see the use of it at the other end. It's like, well, if you're convinced the Lord wants you to do that, then that's what you need to do. So,
and my advice would be, like, for me at the time, I was really interested in apologetics. I was, leading Bible studies for believers and non-believers. So that's what interested me. And Knox happened to be offering a class taught by Dr. Lamerson in apologetics in the mornings. So even though I was scared to go to seminary, I was very nervous, to be honest. I actually fought it for a couple of years. I thought, okay, well.
So that was your first class?
The one class that was available in the mornings was apologetics. So I signed up, and I realized, wow, I actually maybe can do this.
You can do this.
And then after
it's
that,
good to open with Sam too.
Yes. Oh yeah, he's a great teacher. So after that, I was hooked. So don't overthink it. Don't try to take all these hard classes right away. Just kind of
get your
start
feet
out
wet.
slow.
Yep.
Yeah. So that would be my advice.
That's good.
So,
well, thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Well, we're back at SBL, and we have a familiar name with us, at least to our audience, Sam Lamerson. We talked to Sam a little bit last year, and so it's nice to get a little bit of an update. So, Sam, please introduce yourself for anybody new.
Hi, I'm Sam Lamerson. I teach at Knox Theological Seminary in Fort Lauderdale. Mike and I have been talking about UFOs and Bigfoot for a long time.
Yeah, we do that here at SBL too.
That's pretty much why I come.
Okay, so yeah. Yeah, you want to ferret out all the abductees, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm still looking.
Well, believe it or not, I've had scholars at this meeting come up to me and say, I want to tell you my story because I know you won't out me. I've actually had that happen here. Yeah, I've
had it happen in other places, but never here.
Yeah. Well, since you jumped right into that, you've been doing something interesting in Fort Lauderdale. Like, is it at your church or through your church or something peripheral?
It's sort of through the seminary. We have this thing called Lunch and Learn where I just pick a topic and speak like every couple of months. So I wanted to do for Halloween something on the Bible and the paranormal. So we talked about ghosts and UFOs. And in terms of ghosts, we talked about what happened with Saul and the Witch of Endor. And then with UFOs, I talked a little about what the paranormal world is, how we are, as Christians, we believe in at least some sort of an invisible realm, and that there are evil beings in that invisible realm, and that the evil one may be much happier to have us believe in aliens than to have us believe in evil beings that are really going to harm us.
Mm-hmm. So how was that received? How many came out?
It was probably 150 came out, which is, we usually have about 30 or 40. So it was many, many more than we had ever had before. And it was, I had a few people come up to me afterwards and want to tell me their story. And of course, there were people who wanted to ask questions. I didn't allow them to ask questions in front of the whole crowd because you never know what could happen there. And I'm pushing the envelope as it is. I don't want to make things any worse. But it was many people said, I'm so glad to hear somebody who knows what they're talking about speak about these issues, because so often it's just ignored by the church. And we know that there's something there, but the church is almost, as you say in your book, it's almost it's almost materialistic in the way that it looks at the world. We almost get to the point where we say, well, yeah, all that stuff about the invisible realm, it's true, but we don't really want to talk about that. And that's a very serious problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had, it's kind of interesting because, again, at one of these kind of events, I've had professors, from different departments, evangelical schools, come up to me and lament, that just exactly what you described. And some of them even went as far to say that this is going to be sort of in the future a confrontational issue, that like we're going to have sessions on, should we believe this, what the Bible says about this supernatural world or not, and which is kind of startling, but you could see it happening with some of the, like, okay, historical Adam, and these kinds of discussions, because this one isn't going to become any less popular, and it's so embedded in pop culture. So yeah, I could see that happening, which would be both interesting and kind of alarming at the same time, given evangelical.
And I think that some of it is just the average minister is sort of afraid of it. They don't know what to say. So they just kind of let it go. And so it never makes its way down to the ground level. There are people talking about these things and thinking about these things, but a lot of it never makes its way down to the bottom shelf for people to sort of get the easy cookies and understand what's really going on.
Mm-hmm. So what sessions were you able to get to so far? Anything that sort of stood out as, boy, that was interesting, or that was really helpful, or boy, we needed to hear one on that?
I went to a session yesterday on apologetics and textual criticism, which was really good in terms of how many evangelical apologists misuse the statistics of textual criticism, taking them essentially from F.F. Bruce's book, which is 75 years old. And they often, even when they update the statistics, they will only update the statistics which are in favor of the Bible. So F.F. Bruce says there are 5,000 Greek New Testament manuscripts. They'll update that to nearly 6,000, but they don't update the number of manuscripts that have been found for Josephus or Philo or any other documents like that. And so it's essentially unfair, and it does damage to the gospel when other scholars look at that and say, you're just not being truthful with the text here.
Yeah, like different readings. Of course, you're going to get issues of lexicography, with new Greek manuscripts and other texts. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was very, very helpful. I went to Greece this summer with Dan Wallace, where we prepared some ancient Greek manuscripts for photography. His ministry is CSNTM, Center for the Study of New Testament Manuscripts, and they try to photograph as many Greek manuscripts as possible. And one of the interesting things that I found was the way that the text is presented to you affects the way that you read it. And so if you see a text without verses, it will affect the way that you read it. And I'm becoming more and more convinced that the versification of the Bible is one of the worst things that has ever happened to it.
Yeah, because you tend to, if it's broken up into verses, it's like you pull out one or two, that
exactly.
Hey, these are my verses for the day, or you sort of intuitively might assume that, well, this is a thought unit, somewhat related, or
without
maybe
any,
not related at all to what precedes and follows. Yeah,
without any understanding of what the context is, without any understanding of what came before it or what comes after it. And it causes us to read the New Testament and the whole Bible in a way that we would never, ever read another book. And that's crazy. We would never pick up a John Grisham novel, begin in the middle of it, read a paragraph and say, okay, I'm done for the day. Pick it up the next day, turn to another page, and read a sentence and say, okay, that's good for the day. We would say that's a crazy way to read a book. And yet, that's the way that many people read the Bible.
Yeah, you wouldn't even do that to like a nonfiction book, like,
No.
maybe a textbook, because they're typically written according to an outline. But if you have a, like a reference book or any sort of standard nonfiction prose, you wouldn't do that.
Right. You would realize that context is king, and that if you can't understand what's going on on the whole page or in the whole chapter, then you're probably going to miss what that one sentence means.
How about you teaching anything new, anything old, or
I'm still teaching Greek. I love teaching Greek. It's just a wonderful. It's the greatest language in the world, and I love it. I also teach New Testament survey. I haven't taught New Testament survey in a while because of my other things that I'm doing. So I'm really excited about teaching New Testament at Knox Seminary. If you'd like to hear anything that I have to say, just go to knoxseminary.edu, and there are all kinds. That talk I did about ghosts and the Bible, that's up on our website, and there are all kinds of other things up there as well.
Yeah, and that's Knox as in Knox.
Knox, seminary.edu.
So what would you recommend, sort of, for a survey, maybe getting into the New Testament? What kind of resource would you recommend? And have you seen anything on the tables here that you might be adopting?
There are a lot of interesting things, but one of the things I saw yesterday or the day before was this reader's Bible. It doesn't have verses and it doesn't have chapters. And so it's interesting in that it doesn't say the Bible on the cover of it. It's the New Testament. And it's essentially the message, the translation, the message broken up with no chapter divisions. So you read the letter to the Ephesians or you read the letter to Philemon as if it's a real letter. And then you can bring people together and say, instead of having a Bible study, let's have a book club. This is the book that we're going to read, and we'll all read it together, and then we'll talk about what it has to say. And I think people are much less afraid of a book club than they are a Bible study. And even seekers might come when you're just saying, look, this is a book. We're going to read it together, and we're not going to condemn anybody. We're just going to read and see what it has to say and see how it speaks to us.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be a good conversation starter, again, to somebody who's really, unchurched. That's an interesting idea. Who was the publisher for that? I'm
sorry, off the top of my head, I don't remember, but maybe I can find it and email it to you, and you could put it in here.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I'm going to troll all the book tables like I usually do. I've only hit about maybe 10% of them at this point, but
so many books, so little time. That's the problem here.
Yeah, there's I don't know, dozens and dozens and dozens of publishers here, and I've made the comment before. A lot of people come to this because it's the only time you're going to get a discount from some of these high end,
absolutely,
places. So this is the thing to do, even if you never go to the papers. If you live in the area, you pay a single day fee. You go in and you get books at a discount you'll never see anywhere else. Wow. So what about anything personally that's sort of newsworthy?
I just had a granddaughter, so that's incredible. Her name is Ella Grace, and I'm going to call her Elle after Stranger Things.
Does she have any powers?
She can cry. I know that. That's her biggest power right now. I'm still, doing magic here and there, making a few bucks on the side, and making people laugh. So that's always going well.
So this is your first.
This is my first grandchild. Yeah. Elle. So. That's exciting. We're hoping to get a Will next. So
right, yeah, there you go, or a Mike.
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe not
one of them.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for spending a few minutes with us. I know you have another appointment that you got to get to, and I think he's standing right there to your left. So again, thanks for taking a little time with us.
No problem. Thank you. See you later. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
All right, Mike. Well, I feel for David having to get having the last draw, I guess. I don't know what you call it, but the last talk on Tuesday morning. Hopefully people will turn out for that.
Yeah, that's when the conference ends, and so lots of people are gone. But, like I told him, I had that slot once, and it worked out really well. So, hopefully it'll go well for him. He'll get a good crowd and maybe get a heckler or two in there, too.
Well, good deal. All right, Mike. Well, we hope everybody enjoyed it, and I want to thank everybody for listening to the Naked Bible Podcast. God bless.
Thanks for listening to the Naked Bible Podcast. To support this podcast, visit www.nakedbibleblog.com. To learn more about Dr. Heiser's other websites and blogs, go to www.drmsh.com.